Dad's voice was an auditory razor potent enough to shear glass. Mike, he roared egress. Immediately, you low life, his finger stabbed aggressively toward the exit, the vascular prominence in his neck betraying the gravity of his indignation as though I had committed a capital offense. Mom stood static behind him, arms defensively folded, her gaze glacial as if I were not their progeny, but some invasive presence bent on their undoing. Uneducated trash, she hissed the words, themselves tasting of venom as they left her mouth. I remained perfectly unreactive. I offered no defense. I simply inclined my head once, deliberately slow, as if this confrontation was a long-anticipated inevitability. Understood, I replied. There were no tears, no supplication. They were under the delusion that they were destroying me. They had no foresight that the victory was already mine. I had once operated under the conviction that familial love was an absolute constant, yet within my childhood, home affection was strictly a transactional commodity. Stellar academic performance earned a fleeting smile, a single misstep garnered sustained silence. When I made the calculated decision to forego my college education to establish my inaugural enterprise, they saw no evidence of ambition. They diagnosed failure. They loudly proclaimed I had irrevocably sabotaged my future, that I would be socially undesirable, and that my fate was to toil in some dreary, low-paying establishment until my demise. I silently absorbed every corrosive insult, every shard of shame. I allowed them the misguided belief that they had utterly broken me in stark reality. While they mocked my endeavors, I was meticulously constructing an empire far beyond the reach of their imagination. The full scope of their treachery became clear 2 weeks prior to my expulsion, when I eavesdropped on their conversation in the kitchen. They assumed I was asleep upstairs. She's a financial drain, Dad asserted. She will never achieve prominence. We should simply sever all ties. Definitively, Mom readily concurred. We must allow her to hit absolute rock bottom. Perhaps only then will she internalize the lesson. It was in that moment that I grasped the depth of their intent. They didn't merely doubt my capabilities. They actively desired my failure, not for any pedagogical purpose, but purely to satisfy their own distorted hubris. I stood, immobilized in the darkened hallway, listening to the very individuals who were obligated to safeguard me meticulously orchestrate my forthcoming humiliation. The sensation was devoid of the acute pain I had anticipated. Instead, it ignited a cold, precise intensity, a steely resolve. I bypassed confrontation entirely. I did not engage in a heated argument. Instead, I initiated a methodical plan for my immediate and decisive departure. I liquidated and relocated my entire fortune, a sum totaling 20 million, into an opaque account completely inaccessible to them. I hired a specialized moving service, secured a one-way flight to Florida. My newly acquired penthouse was more than just a dwelling. It was a tangible testament to my triumph, boasting floor-to-ceiling panoramic views of the ocean, polished marble flooring that reflected the intense sunlight, and a private executive office where I routinely finalized deals exceeding their combined lifetime earnings by a magnitude of 10. My objective was clear: not merely to leave, but to allow them to savor their erroneous sense of victory. The zenith of vengeance, after all, is not screaming I was right. It is forcing their inevitable realization of their grievous error without uttering a single verifying syllable. The night of my banishment, I ascended to my room, packed 2 essential bags, and abandoned all else. I did not even retrieve the family photo albums, acknowledging they had never truly appreciated them. I checked into a high-end hotel for the night. The following morning, my movers efficiently shipped my belongings to Florida. By noon, I stood in my beach house, my bare feet sinking into the warm sand. The Atlantic breeze caressed my hair, and my phone hummed incessantly with communiques from business associates spanning 3 international time zones. There was not a single message from my parents. Perfect. 3 weeks later, as I savored my morning coffee on the balcony, the call came. It was an unfamiliar number, answered it regardless. It was Mom. Her voice was noticeably altered, tremulous, almost solicitous. Darling, might we engage in a conversation? I could faintly discern Dad's low, anxious murmuring in the background. They required assistance. It transpired that Dad's supposedly infallible investment portfolio had collapsed. They had sustained catastrophic financial losses. They were now expressing grave concern regarding their solvency. In short, they were utterly destitute. Perchance you could render us some aid, Mom solicited carefully, the tone suggesting a trivial request for a household staple rather than a desperate plea for massive funding from the daughter they had scorned. I allowed the ensuing silence to draw out the powerful sound of the waves, providing the soundtrack to the void in our communication. You publicly denounced me as uneducated trash, I finally stated, my voice meticulously. Even you commanded me to leave. Do you recollect that? She stammered weakly. We did not genuinely mean that. You meant every single hurtful word. I walked deliberately back into my sun-drenched living area, my bare feet whispering across the imported marble. I picked up a framed photograph from a side table, my younger self smiling at 17, before I had fully comprehended that love was a conditional contract. I possess 20 million, I declared, each syllable weighted with intent, and not one solitary cent of it will ever enter your possession. The connection immediately terminated. I could almost physically hear the exact moment, the devastating magnitude of their catastrophic misjudgment fully registered. I replaced the handset. There was no catharsis in shouting, no triumph in prolonging their anguish. They were unworthy of my fury. They were worthy only of the crushing realization that they had willfully dismantled their own safety net, and that I was flourishing entirely unburdened by their presence. I returned to the balcony, the ocean stretching boundlessly before me. For the first time in years, I felt an absolute profound lightness.